Well, again, listen, we've got to talk about the Liverpool game now, because I thought it was a game of two halves. I know that's a little bit cliche, but I thought Arsenal first half were comfortable, and then second half was probably the worst I've seen Arsenal play in some time. But overall, Simon, what did you make of the performance? And also, is it 2 points dropped, do you think, against a depleted Liverpool side? Or in the end, you go, do you know what? We weren't great, but we move on. We've managed to get a point. Yeah,
I think it's one of those where, in the immediate aftermath, when fans leaving the stadium, they're thinking, oh, what a chance that was. It would have been 8 points clear, real daylight with City. But then the next morning, maybe when you wake up and you look at the table and think, we're still 6 points clear. Nothing lost from a round of fixtures where you're playing the Premier League champions. You've still got the same gap. And also that Arteta, I think, kind of spoke well at the end, because he looked at it as the whole sort of Christmas block and those games against, Brighton, Bournemouth, Wolves, and coming out of it, the position they did, I think Arsenal would have taken it being 6 points clear from there. So it felt like a tough game at the end of a busy period. I wasn't seeing the Declan Rice that I normally do in a big game. Particularly in that second half, I think Liverpool did a really good job of making that midfield really compact. Will playing with Wirtz instead of a number 9. It was really tight in there. And sort of around the 70, 75 minute mark, I was just thinking, a point here is not a bad result. Take that, get out of there, job done. It's one of those days where it's not clicking, it's not happening, no harm done. But credit, I think, to Liverpool, because I thought in the second half they did really sort of wrestle some control back. But one of those days where Arsenal aren't firing, but then when you look at the table and you think you haven't done any damage, it's not the end of the world.
What do you think, Clive?
Yeah, remember the Wolves game when we played them at home?
Yeah.
We all thought we were going to win 10-0, remember? And it didn't work out like that, did it? And this was a similar expectation. We saw Liverpool have a few rocky results. Yeah. Now we can get them. But actually, they turned out with a lot of pride. They took out a centre-forward and overloaded midfield and got control of the game. And Simon's right. I mean, at half-time, I came up towards the bars and I thought, I heard the commentator say, maybe a point is not a bad idea. I thought, he's right. Sometimes you've got to take it. You've got to take that point and say, no one will remember it if things work out. But Liverpool played the strategy they wanted to play and stopped us, really. And we haven't scored against them in 2 games. But they didn't do much neither. They didn't get a shot on target, so it wasn't a high-event game. No,
I mean, that second half, though, I think was because I expected after the first half, I thought Arsenal would come out second half, as they usually do, really fast, firing. And as you said there, Liverpool, I thought, had control of that second half. But what do you think was missing from Arsenal? Certainly the second half, because when teams press it, and we saw it, I know you talk about levels, but Portsmouth, for instance, they tried to press Arsenal, and Arsenal played through the press really well. That completely stopped against Liverpool. Why do you think that was, Clive?
I thought, I'll be honest with you, I thought the fear kicked in a little bit. I thought it kicked in. It became about what we could lose rather than what we could win.
Yeah.
And it just felt like that. And this is why Portsmouth was quite a nice, refreshing game again. The ball was moving around very, very quickly. I think the fear kicked in and we just stopped maybe taking risks on the day. And we looked at the overall result, looked at the overall block of games. I think we got 16 points out of 18 and we got a 6-point lead. And sometimes you just got to do it. Inside, I'm thinking it would be nice to put them away.
Yeah.
But the way the Champions League is going, we might meet them again, you never know, or another English team. I think we are going to be defined on big games later in the season.
Yeah.
And so we may be seeing them again, so our time with them may come up.
So we've got to talk about it then. Victor Gyokeres. I want it to work for him. I'm a big fan of his. But at the minute, for whatever reason, it's just not clicking. I know we spoke a little bit about Havertz, but from Gyökeres' perspective, limited touches, no efforts on goal, ball kind of across the 6-yard box, he's nowhere to be seen. I mean, where do you stand on him and what do you think's gone wrong for him?
Yeah, he's really struggling, isn't he? And I thought he looked low on confidence against Liverpool. And the touches thing for me isn't as big a worry as it might be, because if you look at someone like Erling Haaland, he'll have 10, 11 touches and score 3 goals. The concern for me, and you're probably better than both of us speaking this, is the kind of movement in the box. When there's crosses going in, he's not there. And is that, I can't tell if that's Gyökeres not reading the signals. Should that be the person crossing it, looking for Gyökeres? That for me is where it feels like the biggest fall down, because we've said for years with this Arsenal team, then if they had a poacher in that box, he'd score so many goals. But it feels like for me, he's just a bit lost at the moment. And whether that's a confidence thing that's affecting him, he's not making those runs, but that is what worries me the most. The touches thing, I never expected him to be a player having loads of touches like Kai Havertz, like Jesus. What I did expect was that kind of poacher in the box to be scoring those goals, and that's not happening.
Do you know what a little bit is as well? I think it's relationships. I think when you play centre forward, you need to know, it's called triggers. So you need to know if Saka goes back on his left foot, he's going to cross it in. Or if Trossard on the other side cuts back, he's going to pull it in. But the fact that at the minute we're going down the line and we're chopping back, we're not crossing it, he's a little bit caught in between. So I think for himself personally, all he can keep doing is getting himself in there. And as you said there, Simon, it's a worry when he's not doing that, because if you're not going to do the link-up play, like if you're not going to play with your back to goal, bringing others into it, then you have to be in and around that 6-yard box as that poster. And the fact he's doing neither, I think it's going against him a little bit. But even his work rate, Clive, seems to have been a bit of a drop-off as well. Is it starting to worry in terms of maybe he's now second-guessing himself?
Yeah, he stopped moving. And when he first started at the start of the season, his work rate down the sides was really, really high. And because he was running so hard and committing to his runs, he was getting the ball. When you half commit to a run, players look at you, they turn away. So he doesn't really want that in there. And so he's not showing the same commitment in his movement. I would say to him, just don't try to be like Havertz and Jesus. Be like who you are, a hard-running mobile target man. But if he's not running and he's not getting in the box, then you start to look at the other underlying data of touches and passes and how many times you're dispossessed, and then it becomes the pressure. So he needs to rebuild his game with work rate for me. I think Arsenal need that type of centre-forward. We can't have everybody coming to the ball. No. We need people running away from the ball. But if he's not running away from the ball, then he's not really bringing the value. So I hope it works for him. But at this moment in time, it's a struggle. But there was a time it was a struggle for Kai Havertz. And now he's the saviour, right? So I'm hoping there'll be a similar arc, but I am a bit concerned.
What do you think then for Mikel Arteta? Because it's a difficult situation, right? Because he wants it to work for him, of course. We saw the emergence of Kai Havertz again against Portsmouth coming back on. What does Mikel Arteta do you think? Because at some point, you can't just stick with something for the sake of sticking with it. You're going to have to make a change somewhere. I personally don't think Gabriel Jesus is the answer because he doesn't want to play there, I don't think. What does Mikel Arteta will do then, Simon, in terms of sticking with Gyökeres or trying to get the best out of Gyökeres?
I mean, I think Havertz coming back could actually help Gyökeres in a way. I think as Clive said, I feel like he's played a lot of minutes, probably more than anyone expected because of Havertz's injury. And maybe just having that burden and the spotlight and the pressure taken off him a bit. I think long term, it kind of feels now that Havertz is going to be your guy, particularly this season. But Gyökeres can still have a role to play. You know, I mean, if you got him for sort of 20, 25 minutes, you know, Clive was saying he doesn't want to look there and see Jesus when you want a goal, but you should really be looking at Gyökeres when you want a goal. And if you've got him on the bench, you know, throwing him on with someone like a Martinelli and Madueke, these guys to run at teams. And maybe there'll also be a bit more of a horses for courses kind of game for Gyökeres. You know, I don't feel like the big games, the Liverpool games, are his games. He feels like a space player. But maybe there'll be games that suit him. I do feel like, though, long term, certainly this season, it is moving towards Havertz being the number 9. But they need to find some sort of role for Gyökeres. You can't have a £60 million man not doing anything. But maybe it's going to be kind of that impact off the bench and finding games that suit him. But I feel for the big games, Havertz is going to be the guy.
I think we said earlier, Darren, about relationships is really important because some of Gyökeres' best games has come with Eze quite close to him, you know. And you can see yesterday straight away with Odegaard and Havertz, they're like best mates, and they were playing 1-2s to each other, weren't they? Immediately. And Gyökeres hasn't had that yet. I'm not making excuses for him. There are things he's not doing well. But he hasn't built those relationships yet within the team. Maybe the closest has been Trossard, maybe, Simon, and that little pass on the inside, and he goes in behind. So he needs to build relationships. So when he, just a little movement and he's on his way, you know? That isn't there yet at the moment. It all feels a little bit prescriptive. Yeah.
Do you know it's a bit of a worry for me as well? Looking at his overall game, because, as you said there, Clive, his biggest strength is running behind, right? So maybe you can pick and choose the games, but if he plays against the so-called better sides, he's not really had an impact against the Cities or the Liverpools, the big games. But if you go and play against a lesser side that do the low block, that doesn't suit him either, because that's more for Kai Havertz who can come off the front, link play. So that would be my only worry, is that if you're looking where you can fit him in terms of the games, Clive, it's where does he... Maybe the Champions League games, because I think he's had 1 or 2 really sharp games in the Champions League. But the Premier League, as we know, is like no other beast. I think it's going to be a little bit more difficult to pick and choose in the Premier League what games you put him in for.
Yeah, I think his better games for me have been away from home.
Yeah.
Where
like Burnley, I thought he was brilliant first half.
Newcastle, I thought he was excellent at Newcastle. And I think there's a bit more space, and we go to him a bit earlier so we're playing against unsettled defences. But I do think sometimes if you come up against Kanate and Van Dijk, you make one run, Darren, and suddenly I think they're quite quick. I think I'll just stay here. And you can't be discouraged by that.
No.
And I think it seems like he's a bit discouraged by the physicality of some of our defenders in the Premier League. And he can't be. He's got to keep going and keep going until he wears them down. At the moment, he looks worn down.
Yeah.
You know, so you just got to keep fighting, keep working hard.